Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So we are from Group 11 and we are going to present about a scholar in Islam or a philosopher in Islam, which is Muhyiddin Ibnu Arabi Al-Hatimi Al-Ta'i. So Ibnu Arabi, its short name, is known as one of the greatest philosopher in Islam, and he is also one of the greatest spiritual teachers, or in other words, tasawwuf teachers. As we know, Muhyiddin means that the revivifier of Islam religion. So Ibnu Arabi is known as the revivifier of Islam religion. So we are going to start our presentation with the meaning or our findings of the meaning of time in Quran.
Okay, now let's talk about Ibn Arabi and time. So in Holy Quran, there's many verses that are stated about time itself. The word time or related to it like day, night, al-yawm, and in Holy Quran were repeated many times. So, and these above were some of the examples. Al-A'raf verse 55, 54, Al-Hajj verse 61, Yasin verse 37, Al-Hajj 47, Al-Ars verse 1 to 3, and Ad-Duha verse 1 until 2. So let's see one by one. Surah Al-A'raf verse 54. In this verse, Allah has said about the creation of heaven and earth in 6 days. As you see in this surah, Allah said, Inna rabbakumullahu alladhi khalaqas samawati wal ard fi sittati ayyam. Fi sittati ayyam means in 6 days. So in the translation, indeed your Lord is Allah who created the heavens and earth in 6 days and then established himself above the thrones until the end. You can see here, Allah created the heavens and earth in 6 days. Al-Hajj, verse 61, shifting of days and night. Allah has said in this verse, ذلك بأن الله يولج الليل في النهار ويولج النهار في الليل وأن الله سميع بصير. This is because Allah causes the night to enter the days and causing the days to enter the night, and because Allah is hearing and seeing. So in this verse, you can see Allah created what Ibn Arabi say as night and day as its creation, as its creature. So you can see night and days also refer to time. Next, Yasin verse 37. وَآيَةٌ لَهُمُ اللَّيْلُ نَسْلَخُ مِنْهُ النَّهَارَ فَإِذَا هُمْ مُظْلِمُونَ. And the sign for them is the night. We remove it, the light of day, so they are left in darkness. So this ayah also show that there is time, which is in this verse is night and day. Next is Al-Hajj verse 47. Comparison between days in dunya and akhirah. وَيَسْتَعْجِلُونَكَ بِالْعَذَابِ وَلَنْ يُخْلِفَ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ وَإِنَّ يَوْمًا عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ كَأَلْفِ سَنَةٍ مِّمَّا تَعُدُّونَ. And they urge you to hasten the punishment, but Allah will never fail in His promise. And indeed, a day with your Lord is like 1,000 years of those which you count. Okay, so you can see here, a day in the Akhirah is like 1,000 years we live in dunya. So this also shows times. Next is Al-Ars, times and men. So Surah Al-Ars is very popular. Usually we recite this surah when we end our class, right? will recite wal as innal insana lafi khus. So what this surah really means, wal as, by time. So Allah has promise with time itself. So it show that, also show that this verse has a relation with times. Next, ad-duha. So ad-duha, verse 1 until 2. Wad-duha wal-layli idha saja. Wad-duha, by the morning brightness. Wal-layli idha saja, and by the night when it covers with darkness. So Allah has a promise by the morning brightness and the night. So it's also show that there is, Allah has said many times about time itself in Quran.
Okay, now I will explain. I will talk about the explanation of time in Quran. Okay, first, Allah remind us in Surah Al-As that if we waste our time solely for dunya, then it will be our biggest loss. Allah begins the surah with oaths like Surah Al-As, which is Wal-As, Al-Fajr, which is Wal-Fajr, and Ad-Duha, which is Wal-Duha, to show that time is very important in our life. In Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, time, beginning with an oath is a method to draw attention to the listener. Next, I will add something. It's five things before five things, which are the young before old, health before sick, then rich before poor, free before busy. Okay, next slide. Okay, now I talk about the discussion of this of time. Okay, in dunya, Muslims are striving for both dunya and akhirat, and not neglecting the rights of Allah and the needs of humans. Such good deeds include all the great acts of worship in Islam, which encompass every possible beneficial use of one's time, like prayers, Hajj, and many other things. All things on earth will perish. It is the essential reality that every moment that passes will bring us closer to death. Islam teaches us that time passes quickly and cannot be retrieved back. Time is the most precious gift that Allah gives to human and be taken from us at any time.
Okay, so we move on to the life of Ibn Arabi. In this topic, we will talk about the early life of Ibn Arabi, travels of Ibn Arabi, death of Ibn Arabi, teachers and students of Ibn Arabi, and the contributions of Ibn Arabi in Islamic world. So next slide. So we move on to the early life of Ibn Arabi, or we should know the short biography of Ibn Arabi. The full name is Muhammad bin Ali bin Ibn Arabi al-Hatimi, or he is also known as Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, the revivifier of religion. He was born in 1165 Common Era, or in Hijrah 560, and he was born in Murcia, Andalusia, or now is known as Spain. Ibn Arabi loved to read lots of literatures. Okay, so Ibn Arabi, he did not care, although that literatures about religion or anything, he would read it because he loves to read lots of literatures books. And after lots of reading, he became more interested in religious philosophy. After he read one book, which is the book, the name of the book is At the Hands of Jesus. And this has changed Ibn Arabi to become more interested in religious philosophy. After that, after this incident, Ibn Arabi is brought by his father to meet his father's friend, which is Ibn Rushdi. or in Greek name or English name, is called as Averroes. Ibn Rushd was shocked on how Ibn Arabi's idea and philosophy when they meet together at that time, when they met together, Averroes or Ibn Rushdi had a conversation with Ibn Arabi. So Ibn Rushd was shocked on how Ibn Arabi at his teenager's life has that level of idea or philosophy. And Ibn Arabi always claims that he has the vision that Allah gave him. The vision means that he can see anything that people cannot see. For example, he can see the future, he can see Prophet, our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he can also see other prophets in his dreams. That means his vision. And next slide. Okay, so we go to the travel part. Ibn Arabi was a philosopher that loves to travel around the world. So, in his early life, Ibn Arabi and his family relocated from Murcia to Seville during his teenager's life. This time because his father worked with the kingdom of Seville in the Seville. So they have to relocate their family in Seville in order for the father to stay and give to work in Seville. And Ibn Arabi had also received military training during his teenager's life at Seville. And in Ibn Arabi went out from Spain for the first time at the age of 36 and went to Tunisia. He went there to learn more about Islamic philosophy, and then after a year staying at Tunisia, he returned to Spain in 1194. And as soon as he went back from Tunisia and he went back to Spain, his father passed away after he arrived at Seville. And in 1195, he left Spain for the second time and traveled to Morocco, and he became the student of Muhammad ibn Qasim al-Tamimi. And then his mother died months later after he left Spain for the second time in 1195. He then returned to Cordoba, Spain in 1198 and stayed there for 2 years. And the next slide. In 1200, he left Spain for the last time and went back to Tunisia to continue his study. And in 1201, he left Tunisia and traveled to Mecca to perform his Hajj in 1202. And he lived in Mecca for about 3 years, and he wrote lots of books while he stayed at Mecca. Okay, so one of his books, which is considered as one of his greatest work, the Meccan Illuminations, or in Arabic it is called as Al-Futuhat Al-Makkiyah. So he wrote that book during his living in Mecca. In late 1204, he visited Medina, and in 1205 he traveled to Baghdad. He went to stay with his friends Ali bin Abdullah. So he went to Baghdad, and he had the chance to meet Sheikh Abdul Qadir Al-Jailani, one of the greatest scholar in Islam. But he did not get to see Sheikh Abdul Qadir Al-Jailani because he only stayed there for 12 days, and he wanted to meet his friend Ali bin Abdullah, and he stayed with his friend to learn more about mysticism. So mysticism is the study of the we cannot see things. The what we say?
Guide.
The right thing. Okay, so he stayed there with his friend during Ramadan month, and while being there, he wrote Tanazzulat al-Mawsiliyah, Kitab al-Jalal wal-Jamal, Kun ma la budda lil murid minhu. So he wrote a lot of books, although he just stayed there during Ramadan month. So that is the power or how well Ibn Arabi can work during his time, during his prime
Inshallah.
time. So in 1206, Ibn Arabi went to Jerusalem and Egypt. This time he returned to South, which in 1207 he returned to Mecca, where he continued his study and write about his philosophy and mysticism. As I said just now, mysticism is the study of the unseeable thing,
See.
the right thing. So during his final time, he visited Aleppo and Damascus, which is in Syria. So next slide. Okay, so this slide will discuss about the death of Ibn Arabi. Ibn Arabi passed away on 1240 Common Era, or in Hijrah 637 after Hijrah. Or specifically, some of the scholars that make a research about Ibn Arabi said that Ibn Arabi passed away specifically on 16th November 1240, and he passed away in Damascus, Syria. And as I mentioned before, that is the last destination that he visited before he passed away. So he was 75 years old when he passed away, and he married to Maryam in his life at Seville. So he had served himself for Islam most of his time, and he became one of the most respected philosophers by the Western philosophers and Islamic philosophers due to his worldview about lots of things. So next slide. We gonna discuss about the teachers and students of Ibn Arabi. Okay, so for teachers, during his time in Spain, he learned a lot with Abu Madian and Ibn Rushd. So Ibn Rushd or Averroes is one of his earliest teachers, because when his father brought him to see Ibn Rushd, and at that time Ibn Rushd was one of the respected scholar in Islam, and his father led Ibn Arabi to learn with Ibn Rushd. And Abu Madian, he is the teacher of Ibn Arabi. So second teachers that is very widely known in Ibn Arabi's history, Muhammad bin Qasim al-Tamimi. So as I mentioned before, Muhammad bin Qasim al-Tamimi is one of the most influential teachers in Ibn Arabi's life, because he taught a lot to Ibn Arabi about mysticism and spiritual journey or tasawwuf. And the last one is Yusuf al-Qumi. Ibn Arabi also meet Yusuf al-Qumi and learned with him for a while and stay with him to learn about mysticism and poetry. So these teachers that I mentioned in the list is one of the most known teachers that Ibn Arabi in Ibn Arabi studied. There are lots of other teachers, and we cannot mention it in this slide because it's gonna take a long time. So we just mention the top teachers that is being written in the history of Ibn Arabi. So we move on to the students of Ibn Arabi. Ibn al-Farid learned a lot in poetry. There are lots of Islamic philosophers that has been influenced by the writings of Ibn Arabi. Okay, so Ibn al-Farid is one of them. He wrote more about poetry and mysticism, and he learned a lot about language, about mysticism, about philosophy from Ibn Arabi. And among his many disciples, the one who had most influential on Ibn Arabi's life or Ibn Arabi's teachings is Ibn Arabi's third son, which is who is Sadr ad-Din Qunawi. So Sadr ad-Din Qunawi was his stepson. And the last one, Abu Said al-Baji. And the others are not mentioned in most of the reference because there are lots of students of Ibn Arabi, and I said just now, if we want to mention all the students of Ibn Arabi, we will take a lot of time. So we move on to the next slide. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the contributions of Ibn Arabi. Ibn Arabi has been known for his poetry, mysticism, and spiritual journey. The philosophers around the world had recognized Ibn Arabi as one of the massive figures in Islamic history. It is because he had a complex philosophy, and the researchers said that one of the hardest philosophy to be understood is Ibn Arabi's philosophy, because he was using high level of abstract words or metaphors to explain about his philosophy. He was also known as a controversial figure because his way of thinking, as I mentioned before, he always received visions or illuminations about the future. So he will write it in his book about his visions, about the events that he met the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He met other prophets as Prophet Adam. He met Prophet Jesus and others. So in his visions, he can see clearly the Prophet, and he can explain one by one the detail of the Prophet. So that makes him one of the most respected philosopher in Islam. Okay, so, and he also heard voices that come to him to do something. Okay, this is not as shaitan's voices. Okay, so this is one of the karomah that has been given to Ibn Arabi. He can hear voices that come to him at night or in day to do something, such as the voice said that he has to write something in his book, so he will write it. And Ibn Arabi also used different methodology, which is school of realization. He developed this because he kept on seeing visions about the Prophet. He was typically being called as the founder of Wahdatul Wujud, which will be explained in the paperwork, which means oneness of being or the unity of being. So this is a misleading created by others to confuse us because he never used the expression or term in his life. Okay, so we continue to the next slide, which is the contributions of Ibn Arabi. He gave the definition of perfect man and stated that no one can reach the stage except for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So before he gave the definition of perfect man, and there are controversial issues about this statement because they thought that every prophet should be considered as the perfect man. But the most perfect man in Ibn Arabi's time is, in Ibn Arabi philosophy, is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the next contributions of Ibn Arabi is his definition on time. So he also gave his opinion upon time, and his definition of time is really difficult to be understood because this would totally drive people to the wrong path, or drive people to go crazy because of his high definition of time. Ibn Arabi has mentioned that time is a circle because a circle has a common in its beginning and ending. So what do we understand from this definition of Ibn Arabi on time? Time is a circle because a circle has common on its beginning and ending. And he added that time is a notch assigned to period or zaman as the period is circulating, and he said that the period has revolved to as it was on the day God created it. So this is so hard to be interpreted, and it is hard to understand the discussion of Ibn Arabi about time. But this will be discussed more in the next slide. So he also did have his contributions in cosmology study, which has also close relations to the time. So next slide. We continue to talk about the books which Ibn Arabi has written during his time. The first point, the total books, approximately 800 works that are attributed to Ibn Arabi, and over 100 of his works have survived in manuscript form. So this means that there are lots of other works or other books of Ibn Arabi that has not been found, and it's only over 100 of his works have survived in manuscript form. So there are plenty of popular books that has been written by Ibn Arabi, and one of the most popular book of Ibn Arabi is the Meccan Illuminations, or in Arabic it is called as Futuhat al-Makkiyah. Okay, so it has 37 volumes originally discussing about mystical philosophy and records of his visions. So originally it has total of 560 chapters and 15,000 pages. Okay, so this is the greatest book that Ibn Arabi has wrote during his life. And until today, there is no complete translation of this book until today.
Wow.
Because it has a lot of pages, 15,000 pages. As our medical books is only reached about 3,000, 4,000, and lesser. The third point, ringstones of wisdom, or in Arabic it is known as Fusus al-Hikam. So Fusus al-Hikam is wrote by Ibn Arabi, is written by Ibn Arabi, and Ibn Arabi summarized his teachings and his mystical beliefs in Fusus al-Hikam. And next, the Diwan is known as the collection of his poetry and contains 5 volumes. And so the printed version is available nowadays, but there is only 1 volume of his work and the other volume is not being printed. So that means that the other 4 is not being printed and only 1 volume of this book is being printed. And the next book is Holy Spirit in Counseling of the Soul, or in Arabic, Ruh al-Quds. This book talk about how to treat your soul, and it is about many interesting people he met in Andalus or Spain. And the last point, Universal 3 and 4 Birds. So this book is a poetic book upon the complete human and the 4 principles of existence. So there are lots of other books that has been written by Ibn Arabi, which such as Divine Sayings, Devotional Prayers, the Book of Annihilation in Contemplation, Journey to the Lord of Power, the Book of God's Days, and others. So all of these books, most of his books discuss majorly about his visions and what he found in his visions, his poetry, and his journey to the spiritual path. So most of Ibn Arabi's books is about philosophy, mysticism, poetry, visions, and he studied on religions. So I think that's all for.
Okay, apart from Ibn Arabi's opinion about time, he also has other criticism. And first of it, and one of it is about at-tahqiq, or appropriate, and also the root of haqiqah, that means reality or the truth. So in Quran, the word haq is used as the conceptual opposite of batil. That means false, unreal, and inappropriate. So the prophet's saying that means everything has a haq. So give to each that has a haq its haq. From this hadith, Ibn Arabi implies that everything in the universe, the society, and even the soul has a right, has its own rightness and appropriateness. So, and it is the obligation of the humans to observe and respect them. And also the word haqiqah is not a Quranic word. Is used in hadith actually. So in another hadith, that means there is no God but God. So in this hadith, it brings the meaning of there is nothing truly real but the real. It also brought us to the branch of Islamic studies, which is Tawheed, which is the oneness of God. So in this hadith, Ibn Arabi implies that God's haq against people is for them to acknowledge Tawheed, and if they do, they will be rewarded with everlasting happiness. Okay, next slide. And another one of his criticism, which is regarding Barzakh, Ibn Arabi employs that the term to designate anything that simultaneously divides and brings together two things without itself having two sides is like the line that separates sunlight and shade. This is about the Barzakh. Ibn Arabi uses the term supreme barzakh or barzakh al-a'la as synonym for non-delimited imagination. So in other words, barzakh, in other words, the cosmos, the realm of possible things which in themselves are neither necessary nor impossible, and neither infinite or finite. So barzakh, or being the middle, means having the property of from each of its two sides. It's a bit complicated to understand, but there is about barzakh. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then his position towards Quran and Sunnah in his work. So his position towards Quran and Sunnah in his work is really abundant. His writings are suffused with quotations and terminology from the Quran and Sunnah. He looks at God's creativity as an analog of human speech. Just like we created words and sentences in substratum of breath, so does God creates the universe by articulating words in the breath of the All Merciful, Nafas Ar-Rahman. And then he also implies that the importance of Quran is that it voices the divine names and signs and verses from Allah in the human language. So this provides the key to deciphering the other books like Taurat and Injil, And also, by interpreting the Quran, we also can interpret the cosmos and also ourselves. And he also always begins any of his discussions with a verse or two. And then he will proceed it to draw meanings that have a bearing on whatever the context may be. It's also it has to be in the condition of the reading must conform to the Arabic language that was as spoken by the original recipients of the Quran, which is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he also said that the Quranic verse have a lot of meanings, and if someone rereads a Quranic verse and sees exactly the same meaning that he saw previous time, he has not read the Quran properly. Okay, that's all.
Okay, next I will present to you about the concept of time in the perspective of Ibn Arabi. And in his voluminous writings on the cosmos, Ibn Arabi employs a great deal of the terminology used by Muslim philosophers, scientists like Avicenna and Averroes, which is his teacher. Indeed, it is hardly possible to speak of the world without discussing basic modalities of its appearance, such as time and space. So these two important philosophical appearance. Nowadays, these two terms, however, have come to have much greater prominence than they did in the pre-modern times. This is, and then when Ibn Arabi discusses time and space, he keeps in view their divine roots. That there is nothing in the universe that is not a sign of God and His working. Okay, next. Okay, so for the first point, Ibn Arabi speaks of them as relation, as you can see in the picture. Times and space are like siblings, and then he contrasts them with entities which are real thing. That means that time and space are not real. Okay. So he is saying that time and place designate interrelationships among things, but they themselves are not the things, and there is nothing out there that they can be properly be called time or place. Okay. So wujud is most real and concrete. In other words, is God. And the point there. Okay. So wujud is the most and concrete of all entities because it underlies every object, every subject, every concept, and every relationship. Wujud in other words is God. True and absolute wujud belongs to God alone, and everything else exists only in a manner of speaking, inasmuch as He has given it its creation. As for time and place, they tell us more about the non-existent and existent. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is the basic modalities of the world, which is the time and space. So in the time and space, time is related to the zaman. Okay. Okay. So time in the Arabic word, which we used to call zaman, and it means the change and movement in realm of being, and this being of cosmos are never be fixed, because permanence and stability are attributes of the real and not creation, and they belong to the wujud and not count, which is time. time is a name that we give to the pattern of ongoing changes that occur in the face of the cosmos. Okay. So to the space, which is in the Arabic word we used to call makan, and how it related to the God is it reflects on the word makan itself, which it is taken from the root which is maf'al, and the name maf'al means the name of place, and makan, this root is count, and count the meaning is being. So makan, the meaning of makan is place of being. So wujud is instead is used to designate God's necessary being. Okay. Tahu? Yang aku punya kan?
Tahu siapa ni?
Okay. So being and corruption, which means makan is the place of being, and corruption is mean the changes, and so the changes bring the corruption. Okay. So how corruption? Okay. Realm of kaum wa fasad, being and corruption. So a philosophical expression that is applied to everything that has a location. And its standard English equation is generation and corruption, which generation is a result of God's creative action, and corruption means disappearance. To speak of being is to speak a place, because a thing is being is localized, and to speak of corruption is to speak of the change, and changes are described in terms of time. Okay. So God is untouched by the time, and just as He is untouched by place, and this is what I mean. Words like Qadim and Sarmadi, both which means eternal or outside time or beyond the time. And in contrast to eternal, temporal or Zamani refers to the changing relationship of created things. Okay, that's all.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. How Ibn Arabi analyzed the concept of time. This is like what Hafiz explained, but this is in another explanation. The Ibn Arabi analyzed the concept of time through it's based on the prophet tradition. Allah SWT is everlasting, beginningless, and endless, which is Allah is eternity. But time that belong to human is short and momentary. So Ibn Arabi says that there is two level of time. The first one is God's time, Dahru. Dahru means a long period of time. And the second is human being times, which is waktu, a short time. Each moment in human's time is the reflections of God's eternity in the person's understanding of his power and action in every instant. Okay, next. We human beings construct a notion of time that is imaginary and subjective, through inspired by the real and objective time of Dahru and Waktu. So human created his imaginary time, imaginary zaman. This imaginary zaman can be understood through two principal models, which is cosmology and relativity. Okay, next. So Ibn Arabi describes about those two principles, which is he said that any points along a circle may be seen as the point separating past from future, while having no extension whatsoever. This point of the noun is still part of the actual extent of the circular line. Next. So from the description of the Ibnu Arabi, Gerhard Bowering explained what he understand about that. That's all of humans' imagination included. The implicit and certain things, time in each moment interact with eternity, as we comprehended that God's creation participates in present moment, and the eternity, the everlasting belongs to God alone. So that's all for the concept of Ibnu Arabi, concept of time of Ibnu Arabi. That's all.
So that's the end of our discussion. Thank you to Dr. Fawaz and all of the members. I hope you all understand this topic about Ibn Arabi and times. And that's all. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.